Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started then. And I am just super thrilled to be speaking with Daniel Henning again, really for only the second time, but it feels like I've known you for ages now.
It's true.
And I am just so excited that you are the voice actor who has narrated When the Band Played On, the audiobook. And you have these wonderful connections to the work of Randy Shilts, even though you never met him. And so, for people who are watching this on my socials and my website, I'll just share that when the publisher first sent me the audition clips for voice actors, yours was the one that really stood out to me because in the clip that they shared, I felt like you really captured Randy's voice. I could hear his inflection, I could hear his tone. It captured the emotionality of how I wrote it. And I was just really pleased and said, Daniel is who I want to do this. And then shortly after, I got a message from you over social media, and I want to hear from you about the experience of finding out you were picked.
Well, I when Tantor Audio produced the audiobook, and they are like my family, and they give me wonderful opportunities to do all kinds of amazing things. And they reached out to me about your book, and it said, when the band played on, I think was even the subject or something, and I was like, what is that? Because of my connection to a phrase very similar to that. And it was your book, and they asked if I was interested in being considered for your book. And I wrote a note back saying something along the lines of, not only am I interested in being considered for that book, but that's my book. You are not going to give it to anybody else. And here's why. And then I told them my connections to Randy Shilts. And I also did the audition, which you heard. And so I got the book on my talent. But
Mhm.
I really think I got the book because Randy wanted me to get your book.
So share a little bit about your connection back to Randy Shilts and not just And the Band Played On, but starting with And the Band Played On.
Actually, I'll go the backwards. A couple of years ago, I got a very similar email from Tantor saying, "Here's this book. Are you interested in narrating it?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? That's my book, and I'll tell you. And here's why." And I told them the same story. That was Conduct Unbecoming, which was Randy's last book, and I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago now, I spent an entire month recording the 39-hour audiobook of Conduct Unbecoming. And the reason I wanted to do that book, and I was nominated for a Society of Voice Arts Awards for that performance, for that book. I was so proud to be able to bring Randy Shilts back because it had been, 20 something years 25 years probably since he passed. And that book had certainly, not been in circulation recently. But there it was, and I got the opportunity to do the unabridged version of it. I was told that there was a version of it originally, but it was abridged, much, much abridged. So the real reason that I got that book, I think, and why I think Randy wanted me to do it is because shortly after I moved to Los Angeles, I auditioned for the HBO movie of Randy's book and the band played on. And I auditioned for the part of Bobby Campbell. And I got down to the final callbacks, and it was just between me and Donal Logue who got the part. And I was up for the role of Brandy Alexander, that was eventually played by Steven Spinella, and it was between Steven and I got that part. And the director, Roger Spottiswoode, he really liked me, but like I was, they were both stars, and they were filling it up with stars, but also I was too sort of young and sweet in a way. Might have worked with Bobby Campbell, but certainly for Brandy Alexander. And so then they brought me back for other smaller roles in the movie because they really wanted me to be in it. And they were like the people screaming about closing the bathhouses or screaming about the blood banks and the Red Cross. And I seemed too young and not I don't know, jaded enough to be the screaming guys. And Roger Spottiswoode, the director, when I was done, he looked me in the eye and he's like, you're not right for these parts, but I'm gonna find something for you in this movie. And my response was, because I had been in Hollywood long enough to know that meant I wasn't going to get those parts. And, when you hear something like that, it's very lovely, but it's also like, so thank you very much. And so what I said was, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure working on this material and working with you. And he's like, no, 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 I'm going to find something for you in this movie. And I was like, great, I'm here.
Mhm.
Um, and then I was coming home from a funeral of a friend of mine who died of AIDS. And as I walked through the front door, David Oliver was his name. He was an actor, beautiful, amazing human, and like an angel. And when I was literally coming back from his funeral, I the phone was ringing before there were answering machines. And well, no, there were answering machines, but the phone was ringing, and I ran over to pick it up, and it was my agent, and she was saying they wrote a role for you, and the band played on, and I couldn't believe it. It was David Oliver and being an angel and making that all happen. And then I come to find out that they really did write this role for me, because Randy had seen the script and he realized that actually the gay people in it were either dying, like the two first characters I was up for, or they were screaming about closing the bathhouses, like the second two characters that I was up for. And to my from what I was told at the time, Randy asked for the character I played, Blaine was his name, for Blaine to be created because they wanted a positive representation of what the gay community did during the AIDS crisis. And one of those things was the buddy program. And so they created this role, Blaine, who is a buddy to an AIDS patient. And they wrote it and for me, and I got to do it. So I'm in, and the band played on. And I feel like in some way, because Randy so specifically asked for that role to be written, and then I know Roger had it written for me, somehow I just have this, I feel like there's just like I'm just like Randy's voice somehow a little bit. And then I got to do the book, and then I got to do your book. And so maybe it's even more than a little bit.
It's incredibly serendipitous. I'm not a big believer in coincidences. It just feels like it brings things so full circle.
Yeah.
And in this really wonderful way, because I hear Randy's voice in your narration and I also hear mine. And that was confirmed by when we met a couple weeks ago in Los Angeles, just how uh, strangely, cosmically, we are sort of on the same page with each other on a whole bunch of things.
Hmm.
And it was just so meaningful to see that connection follow through, and what I think is a really, really strong representation of my literary work in an audiobook. So when we met that night, you
I
brought,
want to hold that thought for a second because I want to say something.
okay.
So I've done now 255 audiobooks. And one of the things I know about myself as an audiobook narrator is that you say that I had Randy's voice and your voice. Well, the only reason that's true is because you put it on the page. Like I am super intuitive. And so if it's on the page, I will find it. If it's
Thank
in the
you.
writing, I will deliver hopefully what you had in mind when you wrote it, not what I want to do to the material or not how I think it should be. And so because the quotes that you chose for Randy, that allowed his voice to exist and it allowed me to find it. And then how you wrote the prose, that was very obvious to me how that needed to be performed. And so I love that you think that about me, but I have to throw it back to you as well, because if you hadn't written it like that, those voices wouldn't have arrived. So great job.